Hello, everyone. It's Phil Wade. How are you this evening? Thank you so much for being here. If you could type in the box below, let me know. Hey, Gene, how are you? Can you hear me, see me? How am I doing? How am I looking? Hey, Elsa, good to see you. Hey, everyone. Thank you. I love the emojis. Thank you, everyone. We've got a good turnout tonight. Absolutely. Appreciate everyone being here. Hey, Kiona, good to see you. Thank you so much. We'll give it a minute and then, hey, Dory, how are you? Good to see you. All right. So a lot of doings in the real estate world. Hey, Hetty, good to see you. Thank you for being here. Go Eagles. Hey, Tara, thank you. All right. As I said, appreciate everyone being here. So let me move the slide and we'll get rolling. Appreciate everyone being here. Thank you so much. So a lot to cover. So we're going to talk a little bit about the, legal suit. It's been in the news. It's generating a lot of publicity, kind of give you some background on that. Talk about some key dates, that have just recently happened. Even though there was a verdict yesterday against NAR, there are other lawsuits. There was a lawsuit in Illinois. The lawsuit that the verdict came in on yesterday was from Missouri, right? So there's one in Illinois. And then interesting enough, the gentleman, the plaintiff's attorney, Mr. Ketchum, filed another lawsuit yesterday again against NAR, Redfin, EXP, Douglas Elliman. So again, in Missouri. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, and then what does all this really mean? How does it affect you on the listing side? How does it affect you on the buyer side? Then I'll kind of give you my thoughts as to kind of where this is headed, and then we'll throw it out for questions and answers. Happy to answer any questions as best I can. Now I do have to preference everything by saying, this is kind of evolving. Yesterday there's been some settlements. We'll talk a little bit about those. Yesterday was the verdict, right? The judge is still going to rule. So this is, nothing really has happened in Florida yet. One thing, that we're going to talk about as well. So, it's kind of business as usual, except for one key thing. But I do believe the winds are changing, not necessarily, for the bad. I mean, I think there's going to be some really good, opportunities for, strong agents, good agents that do a great job are going to actually benefit by this. Those are at least my thoughts. So, all right, let me move the screen and I'll give you a little background. Interesting enough, the Federal Justice Department, right, the DOJ has been, thank you, Carol. I appreciate that. Kevin, how are you? So again, the Federal Justice Department has been investigating the real estate brokerage industry for many years. And again, it's always around kind of the same thing, anti-competitive behavior. Right, price fixing, right, and I think sometimes we see it. There's a certain place I know of in Florida. The commissions are different there; they're higher, right? It's more controlled. So that I'm not saying there's price fixing, but that's what they've alluded to, right? So commissions are negotiable, right? There are no such things as prevailing rate, standard rate, going rate, right? Commissions are negotiable. So again, the DOJ has been after the real estate brokerage, industry for many years. Never really had any success, in terms of, anything coming of it. So until 2019, when there was a case filed in Illinois, it's called the Mohar case, and basically, again, it alleges price fixing, conspiracy, collusion, among NAR and basically four brokerages: RE/MAX, Anywhere Real Estate, which owns Caldwell Banker, Century 21, Sotheby's, ERA, Better Homes and Garden. So 5 franchises, right? So they're all named. And then Remax, Keller Williams, Berkshire Hathaway. So so they're all named. And then there's another suit, filed in. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself. So again, what did the defendants take exception with? What was the problem? All right, the mandatory offer of compensation to buyer's agents. So again, this may be something new for some folks that maybe haven't been an agent quite as long, but basically we are required, right, to offer the buyer's agent with the seller paying it, right, some type of compensation for that buyer's agent. It could be as little as $1, but it usually wasn't $1. So they took exception to that. There was also, again, on some MLS's, prohibition of actually disclosing commissions on public websites of what a buyer's agent is paid, right? Sometimes, when we're working with a buyer, they don't actually know what we're earning until, the property settles, right? Till closing, right? When they see the commission statement. So again, that's changing, right? Buyer's agents were out there. Hopefully no one is doing this. If you are, please stop. You can no longer, nor really could you ever, tell a client your service was free. Oh, I'm free, work with me. The seller pays. No, that is now a problem. So, again, we're going to talk about how to approach that, right? So our service is not free. So, where I started up in Massachusetts, the MLS is called MLS PIN, right? So MLS PIN was owned actually by the brokers, right? So you didn't actually have to be, thank you, Carol, and it was owned by the brokers and it wasn't owned by the boards. So there you didn't have to be a realtor. They charged you a little bit more. I think the dues at the time were, $40 a month. Maybe you paid an extra $10, but you could be part of the MLS. And they also had the same policy of the mandatory offer of compensation. So you had some, people that were realtors, right? And then you had some people that aren't realtors. In Florida, it works a little differently. To be part of the MLS, you have to be part of a board, and the board is controlled by NAR. So again, the folks that were sued, there were MLSs sued. All the MLSs that were sued were kind of NAR controlled MLSs, right? So then a few years ago, they say, okay, we're going to let you join the MLS even though you're not part of NAR. But guess what? You don't have access to the lock boxes. It is, unfortunately, I think, we've had it was kind of a bigger registration. I'll probably end up doing it again, or hopefully they'll get the replay, but it does appear to be that we hit the max. So I'm glad the folks that are here, it's always something, but yeah, please let them know. So, and then again, so what they did, right? You now have access to the MLS, but you don't have access to the lock boxes. You don't have a super key. Can't get into the properties. They took exception with that. And then again, I don't know, I'm part of Stellar MLS. We're part of several MLSs, but kind of the one I know the best. I never knew how to do this. I don't even know if you can, but in some, there are over 500 MLSs in the United States. So there's many of them. And in some of them, you could actually sort the listings by the commission offered, right? Commission offered by the seller. They had a problem with that. So all these things together ended up forming the basis of the lawsuit. These are the things they took exception with. Again, the plaintiffs, right? NAR, and then NAR controlled MLSs. Yeah, that's again, if you have a super key, right? But they don't give you a super key unless you're part of NAR, right? So yeah, I mean, they removed, is that what you're saying, Susan? They removed the commission filter? Right. Again, these things are all happening now, but these are the things that, got NAR and these large brokerages and really everybody, in trouble. And that's what they took exception with, right? So that's kind of the basis of the suit, right? And then what happened? So this happened. So here are the dates. Let's kind of go through the dates. Um, Key dates, right? So the suit is filed in 2019, creates a little bit of buzz, but everybody thinks, no big deal. But these are some heavy hitters. These are some experienced, plaintiff attorneys, had sued Big Tobacco and won. So, they're going up against NAR, Anywhere Realty, which is Coldwell Banker, Century 21, Sotheby's, right? Keller Williams, Remax. And again, they're claiming price fixing, right? And then, like any type of legal suit, it goes through the process, it takes time. And then all of a sudden, in the last, 6-7 weeks, stuff starts happening. And the stuff, begins to seem to be that the system, might be eroding. At least some of it is eroding. Some of it is going to change. So initially in September 12th, MLS PIN, again, they're not a realtor-owned MLS, settles with the Justice Department and does away with the mandatory buyer agent commission. First crack, right? First, again, you can still offer compensation. Most people will, right? But you don't have to. It's not a requirement anymore, right? And then September 20th, Remax and Anywhere Realty must begin to see the writing on the wall, are advised probably by their attorneys that it is best to settle. And they settle for big bucks, right? Remax settles for $55 million. Anywhere Realty settles for $83.5 million. Again, this is just in Missouri, right? This is the Missouri case, right? These numbers are just for Missouri. NAR, Keller Williams, Berkshire Hathaway, they fight on. They go to trial. Now, interesting enough, I didn't put this date in, but somewhere in around October 9th, NAR then across the board does away with the mandatory offer of compensation. Unbelievable, right? Right before they're going to trial, one of the key points they buckle on for whatever reason. So again, you're going to possibly, I'm not saying it will happen, but it is possible that you will now see listings in the MLS with no buyer agent commission. It is now legal to do that. Now, it was legal before to put $1 in, $100 in, right? So, so that is possible. Could become more prevalent. We don't know. All right. Then yesterday, the Missouri case, the jury rules against NAR, Keller Williams, Berkshire Hathaway, and awards $1.87 billion. $1.87 billion. They're going to appeal the verdict, right? They're going to appeal. This case may go all the way to the Supreme Court. Could take 3 or 4 years to finally determine what's going to happen. But again, right, we see MLS PIN settle. We see Remax and Anywhere Realty, right? Some big franchise brokerages settle. And then the jury rules against NAR. So those are not good things, right? Those are not good signs. Those are things saying that, hey, there potentially was, price fixing and conspiracy. More stuff going on, more stuff maybe coming, right? More stuff possibly coming. So there's still that original Illinois case that is still out there. No one has settled. Everyone is fighting. Maybe they're thinking of settling now based on what happened in Missouri federal court. Yesterday was an additional case. Again, that same plaintiff attorney, Mr. Ketchman there, filed another suit against NAR, EXP, Redfin, Douglas Elliman, right? So they're going, we won one case against those, against Keller Williams and Berkshire Hathaway, going after others. Could other lawsuits start popping up in other states? Potentially. And then we still have the Department of Justice investigating. If the Department of Justice had their way, there would be a decoupling, right, of the buyer's agent commission and the seller's agent commission. The seller would not even be allowed to offer that. So what's next? What's going to happen? Hopefully, opportunity is knocking. Hopefully, a good thing is going to happen. So let's talk a little more. On the listing side, again, hopefully you're doing this now, and this is not something new, but I think it needs to be accentuated, right? It needs to be talked about. You need to get out in front of this, right? Again, it's transparency. It's letting people know, right? Explaining your value. Typically as a listing agent, right? You listed the house, you do the photography, you wrote the description, you marketed it, you promoted it, social media, all the things we do, to bring in buyers, right? But what you didn't do, or maybe you didn't do as much, is you didn't find the buyer. Right now, potentially, again, the listing agent could find the buyer, right? I mean, that was always possible before, but it could become more prevalent now if the listing agent, there's no buyer agent commission offered, right? Again, I don't know that I'd want to be out there with a listing like that. Again, it's up to the seller, right? But you want to explain to your seller, what the buyer's agent does, how they're beneficial, how they're going to help, the property being exposed to more people is going to bring a higher price. Right up front, what your commission is, what the buyer's agent commission is. There's that concept of variable agent, variable commission, right? If you find a buyer, sometimes people charge less, sometimes they don't. You want to explain that now there's no requirement to compensate a buyer's agent. They can, because it's going to weaken the demand, right? And I'm going to put a little plug in. We just came out with a new killer listing presentation. It's all right online. You can download it, edit it. It's really neat. So again, you want to, you're promoting your value, right? You are that top-notch listing agent that people, look, I think one of the things that caused us trouble in this case is nobody really knows what a real estate agent does. They just think we make money, and that is the farthest thing from the truth. We work hard, right? We work very hard. So again, you want to explain that, right? You want to, promote yourself. Because again, if you think about it, one of my strategies, right, I attack the the FSBO market. FSBOs are tough, right? Because what they think is, oh, the commission is off the top. My house is going to sell for $500. I'm going to sell it for that. You're going to sell it for that. What do I need you for? Wrong. I will sell your house for more. Maybe not in every situation, not every time, but in the vast majority of times, I will get your house sold for more. Maybe they priced it wrong. Who knows? Do they know highest and best, right? Are they going to call the lend, right? All the things we do. You want to explain to your client how you are worth your weight in gold, how you're going to get them more. It's not the commission. It's what they get at closing. That's what's important. And a good agent will get them more, right? So you want to get that down, and you want to have that strong, listing presentation. All right, the buyer side. So this is where potentially, you know, things may change a little bit more, maybe not. We don't know yet, right? So again, you know, NAR has been promoting the buyer broker agreement for a while, saying we need it. I think now you should have a conversation with your client about this. Every single client, you know, I used to tell this story. I never used one of these, right? I never used one. Why? Because I felt confident. Like, why would anybody not want to work with me? Why would anybody ever want to go around me? Right? I figure if I ask people, you know, makes them feel uncomfortable, maybe then they don't want to work with me. But here's the rub now. The rub now is you want to explain to that buyer what you're worth, how you get compensated, right? And you want to have that buyer broker agreement because potentially you could see listings out there with very, very low commissions. Right? So the buyer broker agreement, then the buyer makes up the difference. If they're only, let's say, offering 1%, right? And maybe you have a flat fee. Maybe you charge, you know, $7,500. You know, again, if the commission offered is less than that, you know, the buyer makes up the difference. Maybe if, you know, it's a $500,000 home and it's a 3% commission and now the commission's $15,000, you know, maybe the difference between, you know, that 75 extra, maybe you split that with the buyer as a buyer rebate, right? Buyer rebates are going to become more in competition, right? Competition. Maybe you're going to say to yourself, hey, I am strictly a buyer's agent. That is all I do, and I am awesome at it. You might see that. You might see flat fee buyer services. It's still evolving. We don't know. Just want to be aware. Right? Again, you want to explain what you do, right? Again, I mean, you know, I can't tell you, I would meet buyers and they'd say, oh, are you the listing agent? Right? You might meet them on Zillow, right? Or, you know, we've all heard that, right? So again, there's a lack of education. That is one of, you know, my big problems with NAR. They're like, they do a terrible job. You go into a Starbucks with 10 potential buyers, they don't, 9 out of 10 have no idea what a buyer's agent even is. Right? Why? I don't know. Lack of education, right? So you want to explain what you do. I'm going to show you these houses, right? I'm going to run comps. I'm going to make sure you're not overpaying. I'm going to put the offer in. I'm going to negotiate hard on your behalf. I represent you. I have your best interest. I'm going to be there at that home inspection. I'm going to make sure that house is right. You know, we're going to talk about an appraisal contingent, right? All the things you're going to do to help them. That becomes more and more important. And then you're going to explain to them what it costs and why. Why it costs something is because there's a lot of work to find them the correct home. Right? And then obviously the seller has representation. You need representation as well. So again, it's communication. Many of you are doing this now, but again, like, you know, I think, you know, some of the, you know, maybe not really communicating, right? Again, this will help you. All right. What do I think is going to happen? How is this potentially going to play out? All right. So again, the mandatory offer of compensation, that has already gone away. That has gone away in Florida. There is no more need for that, right? So now you can't tell the buyer, right? You know, when you're working with a seller, they don't have to pay anything to a buyer's agent if they don't want to, right? So that's gone. Now, I believe you'll see a decoupling of the MLSs from NAR. They're going to take them away from NAR. Again, that's just my personal thought. I haven't read that, but I see that coming. Again, I think resourceful agents will take over, right? Again, you might see just exclusive listing agents, exclusive buyer agents. You might not, right? But those better agents, those agents that communicate, those agents, right? You know, that can market themselves are going to have no problem with this. I think as an agent, it allows you to be more creative. right? In terms of how you're communicating your value proposition to both sellers and buyers. There's going to be more transparency. People are going to know what you're going to get paid as a buyer's agent. It's going to be out there on the internet in a big way that is coming. And there's going to be more competition. Don't fear competition. Competition is good. I see it sometimes, and it can be, I see it, and I think the folks that are going to have the most difficulty with this are agents that believe they're entitled. They're entitled to those commissions. And I know they're out there because I've seen their posts, right? That you're not entitled. This is America. This is competition. Competition is good. Competition is what founded capitalism, right? So again, this is positive if you view it that way. All right. This is important. This is more the crux of the matter, in my opinion. So the judge has not ruled yet, right? From my research, what I'm reading, that ruling can go one of two ways. Way one, buyer's compensation allowed by a seller. Like again, they're not required. That requirement is gone, right? But they still can do it. It's optional. They still may want to. Most probably will. Not going to be a big deal. Or the bad thing, I think, is if they rule there's that complete decoupling, that sellers are no longer able to pay the buyer's agent commission at all. At all. I have no way of handicapping this. I have I'm not the judge. I'm not even versed in what he's looking at, right? But from my research, what I read, those are the two things, is how this is going to go fairly quickly. At least, again, there's potential to appeal, right? Could go all the way to the Supreme Court. But again, hopefully the ruling is, it becomes optional. That would be good, I think. All right, so we covered a lot, and hopefully you have a little better understanding. Do some research on your own. Happy to answer any questions anybody has. Type them away. All right, let's see. Tony, that's possible. It's hard to say, whether that will happen or not. I mean, again, there is some talk. Hopefully, again, this is a positive thing that buyers will be able to roll the buyer, the buyer broker commission into their loan. Yeah, I mean, it'll be terrible. Well, it has a good chance. I mean, Christina, how are you? There are some of them out there. We know that, and they will get. Hold on, you're typing them pretty quickly here. Will the listing agreement change? Potentially. I mean, again, none of this, Ellen, none of this has actually hit, hit Florida. Not quite there yet in terms of, what will happen. We're just still, I think, I called the legal hotline today, and, a lot of this is still being figured out, but potentially it could change, right? It could take out that, mandatory, buyer agent commission, maybe not. But again, if it does change, we will certainly let you know. Does DW still require NAR MLS? Yeah, unfortunately, because that's the only way we can have MLS. It's through NAR, right? Again, maybe that changes, but at the moment, it hasn't changed. So yes, we still require that. I'm not a believer. I'm not a fan of NAR, personally. There you go. Thank you, Amy. That's a great point. That's exactly how it is. You just have to, sell yourself, right? I think you had to do that as a listing agent. Now, you're not going to just meet that buyer, at an open house and off they go with you. You're probably going to have to be more open and tell them what you're doing, more transparent. All good. Hey, Stacy. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't see that changing at all. I mean, obviously, new construction, everybody likes that. We're selling a lot of it. They have some good incentives. So again, I don't see that changing. That's a great question, Tara. What about VA buyers? They're not allowed to pay for agent commissions. That's true. That's never been talked about. But yes, that is so pertinent, right? So we don't know. Again, there's a lot that's kind of happening, right? It's evolving. This is kind of where we are right now. The existing listing agreements are not affected. Hey, Glenda, how are you? Right. Thank you, Christina. Yep. No VA buyers. Right. So that could be a problem. Yes, we still for the time being need to be members of NAR, right? I mean, again, maybe that will change. Where we've heard, I think some of you have heard, like Remax leaving NAR, Redfin leaving NAR. Where those are national brokerages in all 50 states. Where they're leaving NAR, they're not leaving NAR in Florida. They're leaving NAR in states where they don't have to have that restriction, right? If we leave NAR, we're closed out of the MLS for the time being. So we have to stick with NAR for a little longer. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it will get rid of, some of the lesser unscrupulous agents. They're out there. I get the calls. It's bad. Right. MLS, then we wouldn't have to be part of NAR. We don't have to be, part of a board, right? Get rid of NAR. There you go, Ariane. I mean, I think, what do they do? What benefit do they provide? I mean, to me, it's a very, it's an antiquated system. So Neil, how is Ultimate going to handle this in? And then there doesn't appear to be anything else. So maybe type in the rest of your question. We can, Claudia. Yep, absolutely. But it's hard now, right? Because again, we can't really leave. There's no alternative at the moment. Stellar doesn't require NAR. I mean, I'll certainly look into it. I mean, I'm getting the sense that nobody is all that happy with NAR. No, it doesn't. But then, again, I mean, there are a few good things that NAR does, and I'll tell you what I think they are. One, the legal hotline. I do get some assurance when I call them. So that is a valuable service. And then, again, we always know we're going to get paid, right? Yes, buyer's agent, right? I mean, you're never going to not get paid because it's in the MLS. So those are some good things. Do they outweigh the bad? Hard to know. Stellar doesn't require NAR, but again, I'd have to check on those lockbox. Glenda, that is a great question. I don't think you have to, right? I don't think you have to, but you might. One of the things, I mean, I think it's advisable. It's better to have it than not to have it, right? I mean, we always want to do that buyer consultation. One other thing I didn't mention, and I think it's important, again, if there's a listing and the commission is low, right? You're working with a buyer, the commission is low, call up that agent and say, hey, can you offer more? Please ask your seller. I'm ready to submit an offer. I wouldn't call them unless you're ready to put in an offer, right? Or you want to show it and you think there's a good chance, but you can negotiate, right? You can negotiate with that listing agent. That is not going away. What you never want to do is put that request, that offer, right, in the contract, the purchase contract. Maybe now what you need, the legal hotline told me this today, you might get a commission agreement. So now it says seller, right? You cross that out and you say brokerage. The brokerage, Remax, right? Maybe they have a listing in the MLS. It's offering 1%. Hey, you want 2.5%, right? You get a commission agreement for that extra 1.5%, and they're willing to pay you. There'll be more of that. There'll be more negotiation. I'm going to check on that, Tony. That is interesting. That is not my understanding. you would be able to have seller without NAR, just not the lock boxes. That's possible. Now, again, I mean, do they have to pay you, right? That offer of compensation. I mean, I think these are all kind of developing questions. There you go. So, right. So, I mean, that is going to happen. You're going to, thank you, Kevin. You're going to see more, more and more of that, right? In terms of, people pay again, right? Like that's kind of the whole concept. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to decouple the seller paying the buyer's agent commission. I mean, the buyer's paying it. They're buying the house. The money's coming from somewhere, right? They just, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, well, again, I mean, we don't know, Lorianne, how it's going to change. I mean, I think, again, it may not change all that much at all. There you go. Absolutely. I mean, have that buyer presentation just like a listing presentation. Absolutely. They have caused the problems. They have caused the problems. I think, again, in Florida, it's pretty competitive here. Potentially in some other states, there could be maybe less competition. We're kind of all getting lumped in the same basket. I think RJ, it'll be positive because of more transparency. Buyers will be more educated. Sellers will be more educated. There'll be more competition, right? I mean, again, I think what we all, I think it's almost like price fixing, right? I mean, I think that's going to go away. There's going to be more competition, so I think, again, if you're that resourceful, realtor, and you have a good, value proposition, you potentially can get more business. Well, the people that aren't NAR would be, there are, I mean, referral companies, right, Carol? They're not NAR. I mean, you can have a brokerage and not be part of NAR, perfectly fine, licensed by the state of Florida. It's just more difficult in terms of the MLS. At least it was that way when I joined. Some of it is starting to deteriorate. Obviously, we're seeing that. Again, this is an evolving thing. This is, I think, tonight's webinar is to help you sort of understand, be able to communicate effectively with your clients, right? But, this is something we have to continue to keep our eye on. Hard to say. It's hard to know. I mean, I think there will be some reduction in commissions overall. Right? Some reduction. I think primarily there won't be as much paid to buyer's agents. Again, I don't think it's going to be a huge drop, 5% maybe even less. I don't see this really changing all that dramatically. I think once the dust settles, I don't know if anybody remembers TRID, right? When TRID came out, again, there was more disclosures, right? And it was this whole like, oh, nothing's going to close, it's going to take long, right? And then it was business as usual. Kind of thinking that it might be like this, right? With this, again, don't know. I think that that ruling coming out of Missouri with that judge, that's the big one, right? If he rules that the seller cannot pay that buyer's agent commission, that will be more detrimental than if it's optional. Optional's fine. I mean, it was kind of optional before, except it wasn't zero. It could be $1, $100, $1,000. Yeah, absolutely, Kim. I think that's absolutely true. I think having that buyer broker agreement, get good at asking for it, get good at presenting it. It should be almost a no-brainer. No, everything. No, there's no changing. Everything is the same. There's nothing that has to be done differently at this time. The only thing potentially is that if your seller wanted to not offer any compensation to the buyer's agent, that is now allowed. That is really the only change right at the moment in Florida. Nope, I don't think you have to. No, I don't think you have to change anything. Nothing has changed. Okay, thank you, Lisa. That's a good point. Thank you so much. All right, so Renata says a lot of buyers can barely pay for the closing costs. How are they going to pay us? That is obviously a problem. I mean, there is talk of, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac allowing buyers to roll the cost of the buyer agency into their loan. That would be a great solution. There's been talk of that. Hopefully that's coming. Amy says, finally, buyers won't put anyone on the deal. When they have to pay for that service, they will want to get the best. Now, there you go. There you go. There you go. I think that's spot on, right? I mean, again, my friend or my aunt, or right? I mean, no, that shouldn't be how it is. Tony, I'm going to follow up tomorrow on that regarding RASM and all the boards and kind of where all that stands. Absolutely, Linda. Linda's saying, this is breaking. Things are changing. I mean, just keep your, continue to, Google every so often, NAR lawsuit. It'll inform you. If anything major happens, we'll do another webinar. Hey, Jennifer. Well, I do. I mean, I think, it varies in different places. I mean, South Africa, I've heard they have what are called open listings. There can be 7 listing agents all competing to find the buyer. UK, typically it is, the listing agent has both sides. The buyer really doesn't have representation. I mean, obviously, again, I mean, it potentially is heading there, but I mean, I don't know. Things don't change overnight. Things take time. We'll have to see. Neil's asking, how is Dalton Wing going to handle the contracts? I really don't see any change yet. They're all kind of standard Florida forms. I don't see anything there. Agency relationship, I mean, in terms of, we are transaction brokers. Again, if you're working with a buyer and you think, hey, the difference between a single agent, right, and a transaction broker, maybe you're promoting yourself as a single agent, right? I mean, that's possible. The only downside there is, if it's a Dalton Wake listing, you wouldn't be able to show that unless you transition to transaction broker. Thank you. Tara's a big advocate for the legal hotline. They're good. They help. Just to bounce things off of, not all the time. I mean, sometimes, they can be a little not forthcoming maybe for what you want to hear, but they're usually pretty good. They help confirm things. There you go. I mean, I think that thank you, Christina. That's a great point, right? We can tell, that's a service we have, right? I mean, obviously we're not attorneys. We got to tell them that. But that is a good point. I mean, again, you got to think hard, right? You want to think hard. What is your value statement for buyers and for sellers, right? And then communicate that to them. I think someone said about, I think it was Amy, right? Having, the buyer consultation, just like you have a listing presentation, you have a buyer presentation. It is going to be recorded. I will run it again. I mean, I ran out of, it can only accept 100 people. I think we had over 200 people register. So it was, very popular in that regard. It's my biggest webinar ever. Thank you so much. Let's see what we got. Probably not a lot, Neil. I mean, that's again a good question. What happens in the typical ecosystem for advertising and channels to gain leads? Well, I mean, certainly, leads, if you can generate free leads, open houses, right? Social media, good, right? It may cause, hey, do I still want to pay Zillow? Am I going to get as many leads, right? Is the commission going to be as much so I can support to pay them? I mean, I think that's yet to be determined. I will check that out and I will get back to everybody. I think it'll weed out the bad agents. Yes, there is, Susie. How are you? Yep, commission agreement. It says, seller, right, for seller, but you can cross per the legal hotline. They are working now on developing more forms for us, right? Again, legal hotline, part of NAR, right? I think, sometimes we think it's all bad. I mean, as I said, there are some good things, right? Some maybe not so good things. But yes, we have a commission agreement. There are going to be more forms coming out around all this to, further, customize to the situation. Thank you, Claudia. Claudia, there's a National Association of Hispanic Realtors, right? So again, there's going to be a lot of information on this coming out. Absolutely. This is, it's an important topic. Nope, that's they again, I'll check that, but I believe they can. Tony's asking, can the buyer's agent be paid on the Alta from the buyer? I believe they can, except if it's VA. That would be problematic. Hey, Elise, thank you for being here. Elise is Dalton Wade's onboarder, marketer extraordinaire, social media person. So, right, so she's saying this is an opportunity to reevaluate your marketing, right? Be creative. We're here to help you. That's possible too. That is possible too. Buyer can just ask for a seller credit and then pay their agent on the Alta with the credit. Absolutely. Well, basically, how is paying the buyer's agent price fixing? The concept is this, Ellen. Basically, you paid the buyer's agent as the seller to negotiate against you, right? To negotiate against you. You're paying somebody to negotiate against you. That theoretically person should be paying their own way. That's the problem. That's the problem, along with, it's all the things together, right? It's paying the buyer's agent commission, not providing the lock boxes, agent saying it's free, sorting the listings by commissions paid, right? All those things added up to a system that seemed maybe not as competitive. Again, there's appeals coming. From everything I've read, NAR did a very poor job in defending themselves. They got walked on. It could be, Lorianne. It might not be. We don't know that yet. I mean, Lorianne's thinking maybe it could be like rentals. But again, it's interesting, Lorianne. Over in South Florida, I know we have some agents, from there on here tonight. There, they split the rentals. You have a $3,000 rental. Each agent makes $1,500, right? So again, a lot of these are local practices, not everywhere. Oh, absolutely. I mean, Dante, I think that, I had someone, his question, I find the lawsuit somewhat puzzling. The commission is clearly specified, right? All that. And then the seller decides what they offer. right? Or, one concept they paid me and then we offered that. But, the attorneys took exception and they won. They won. We'll see. Again, NAR is not buckling yet, right? They're starting to crack around that, mandatory offer of compensation, but they, fully didn't. Change is good. Thank you, Kevin. Absolutely. It's possible, Tony. It's possible they will win. The system has been in place for a long time. It definitely seems to work. I think sometimes when you're in the system, it can be beneficial. I don't know. Did they lose, because they didn't have great representation, didn't do a great job defending themselves? I don't know. I don't think people would have settled. I mean, that was kind of the first tip when Remax and, Caldwell Banker settled. In the end, it looks like they were smart to have done so. Yep. Hey, Alyssa, how are you? Good to see you. Yes, we have the buyer agreement in .loop. It's right there. Absolutely. No, we don't have to be single agents. We could be. We don't have to be. I think, again, if you start to see, there's probably going to be a trickle of listings with lower buyer agent commission. That's probably going to happen, especially in the beginning now. But, it could just stay that way. There's always been, there's been entry only, right? Flat fee, there's so many different ways. It's just, another variation off it. Again, Christina, I think if you do have a buyer agent, brokerage agreement or a commission agreement with the buyer, and the commission being paid is less, you definitely want to let the title company know the buyer is going to be paying you. I think that would obviously be important. You wouldn't want to miss that. Yeah, I think that's Lorianne says she's got, her listing should sell fast now. She has great buyer, right? That's the whole idea, right? Offering that commission, at a higher may incent somebody to want to show that house. That's possible. NOR says, Fannie Freddie might, look to change their, debt to income ratios. Absolutely, Vivian. Absolutely. You can definitely do that. Certainly. That's the whole idea. That's the whole idea. It's transparency, education of the seller and of the buyer. I think it potentially could hurt Zillow. I think there's still going to be the same number of leads, right, coming through, but I do think that, it may be harder to justify, what Zillow charges, right? And they may have to lower their prices. It's hard enough to make Zillow work to begin with. It's difficult. Some agents do it. It happens, but, so again, obviously if you're getting less, that needs to be reflected in what they charge. Right. So yes, Susan. So it already is optional. It's optional right now. It's optional now. Sellers can offer 0 and have their listing put in the MLS right now. Again, why would anybody do that? Why would an agent tell them that? Maybe they think they're going to get the buyer. I don't know. Hey, Roy, how are you? Roy says he doesn't have Zillow. Well, it could benefit Zillow. I don't know. It's hard to know. Oh, Kia, how are you? That is a great question. That is something that we should definitely work on. I want to put that down. We just finished the listing agreement. We'll get that buyer's agent package kind of and notify everybody. Thank you, Lorianne. I appreciate it. Thank you, Linda. All right, everyone. Appreciate you being here. Let's see if there's any last questions. Thank you so much. Keep the faith. Work hard. Have a great evening. If you have any other questions, just let me know. Thank you so much. Good night, everyone.